And we're live, everybody. Happy Thursday and welcome to this week's Spark Seat, y'all. I am so excited to have this conversation, and it's my pleasure to welcome Benir Pierre to the Spark Seat this week. And if you're watching live with us, let's make this a conversation as always. So join in, chime in, and share your thoughts and reactions. And if you're on Team Replay, put hashtag Team Replay and let us know what you think. This is a new conversation that I'm excited to have. And also, in all transparency, there's some learnings that I need to do myself around this story. So I'm excited to kind of soak in this energy today and to really have a conversation about why it takes courage to both unlearn some of the stories that we've been conditioned to absorb, and why it takes courage to step into our power and to embrace what it means to be financially abundant and to have freedom. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation. I'm going to tell you all a little bit about Benir. She is an out-of-the-box, free-spirited, crystal-carrying, magical manifestation magnet on a mission to help 1 million women heal their relationship with self, God, and money. As an abundance strategist and intuitive life coach, Benir is the secret weapon every purpose-driven leader needs to help maximize their impact, income, and intuition. Drawing from her education in social psychology and more than 15 years in the financial planning industry, combined with her spiritual intuitive gifts, Benir developed the D.R.E.A.M success strategy system, which has helped hundreds of clients find spiritual, emotional, and financial freedom. Her signature system uses a combination of psychology and profit strategy to help savvy coaches, creatives, and consultants apply the law of attraction to break through their money blocks, create high-profit, soul-aligned offers, and scale their heart-centered businesses to consistent 10K months. That's quite a mission. How about that? Dang, I always ask people to send me their bios, but when I read yours, I was like, whoa, hello. That's a mission. So welcome, Benir. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachel.
Right on. Part of the Spark mission and part of my mission is to lift up and elevate voices of everybody in our community, and to really shine a light on some of the stories that aren't out in the dominant discourse. And so I'm excited to shine a light on your perspective, because you bring a really unique lens. And I love the out of the box kind of approach that you have around all that you do. And so let's just dig in and let's talk about for you, because the first question I always ask people is, what does courageous leadership mean to you, given all that we just learned about who you are today on March 8th? What does courageous leadership mean to you?
Honestly, I think really just having the courage to step outside of the box, and not feeling like you have to, I always tell people labels only belong on wine bottles. And so not feeling like you have to fit into this image of what it means to be a woman or what it means to be an entrepreneur. So to be courageous really is simply having the courage to be who you are, who God created you.
Yeah, I love that, because it does. It takes courage to step out of the box. I think for many reasons, right? We talk about this all the time in the Spark community, and I particularly have been thinking a lot about what happens when you are. I see a lot of us as kind of sponges, right? Up until a certain point in our life, we've absorbed so many messages and interpretations and so much information and misinformation that we have to unlearn a lot. And so I'd love to hear about your unlearning journey and what it's looked like for you to choose courage over comfort. And maybe there's a particular story, or maybe you have a particular moment that comes to mind when you actually took the leap of faith and stepped out of the box.
Absolutely. Honestly, my whole life probably has been the unlearning. Part of my testimony, I am a survivor of childhood sexual, physical, and emotional abuse. I was abandoned at birth, and that led to an adolescence filled with depression and suicide attempts. And so, my unlearning probably began in college, really getting to this space of recognizing that I deserve to be here. For so much of my life, I made it my mission not to consume too much space. And that's really hard for me because, as you just said, I am the out of the box woman. And so, but I made it my mission not to be inconvenient, which happens with a lot of survivors. We make it our burden not to be a burden. And I realized that, for me to fully show up as I have been called to, and for me to fulfill my mission of helping a million women, I can't do that and shrink. And so my example of really choosing courage over comfort, again, outside of my personal healing journey, probably would be when I decided to rebrand my company and show up as me. I've been coaching for about 7 years now, but for about 5 of those years, I was hiding in a corner, and I only did it because I loved it and because it's who I'm called to be. And I knew that I had an impact to make, but I was afraid to show up. I was afraid to really be bold. I mean, if you scroll through my page, I say some very unconventional things. And I realized that, but that was never me before. I was always the polite one, the PC one. And I made it my burden, again, not to be a burden, not to cause discomfort. And so when I decided to really step into the person that I was created to be and really have the impact that I was created to have, that meant, I grew up Christian, and as such, there were a number of things that we were taught were inherently wrong, even though I didn't really have a basis for why it was wrong. And so showing up as me meant saying, hey, I know that there's some things you're probably going to judge me about, but I know that they work and they help people. And I love crystals and they help people, and not being afraid of the judgment that came with that. I think for so long in my life, I was afraid of judgment. And so it stopped me from being who I was called to be. And that showed up in my money story. And, like I said, for the first 5 years, I kind of hid in this corner and I was afraid. And so I was still working full time, but there was no way that I could continue working full time and have the impact that I was supposed to have. But I was afraid to make, $10,000 a month. I grew up, I when we were younger, I remember my mom got food stamps and food assistance. And so the thought that I was worthy to make significant money and hire other people, I just couldn't fathom that. And so for me, part of that unlearning and part of choosing the courage over comfort was recognizing that in order for me to have the impact that I want to have, one, I have to show up fully as me. And I can't do that while working a 9 to 5, which many people can, so there's nothing wrong with having an employer. But I knew that for me, my calling, I couldn't fulfill that while working at my job. And so I showed up as me. Within 90 days, I was able to quit my business, or quit my job rather, go full time in my business. And then within 6 months of that, I was consistently earning $10,000 a month. And the first couple months, I just kept waiting for the shoe to drop, because again, I've been coaching for years prior to that. And I recognized that all I had to do was show up. I had a friend of mine tell me, as I was kind of deciding, am I really ready for this? She said that we don't have to see every step. We just have to see the very first step, and the staircase reveals itself as we walk. And having that courage to really leap big has helped me lead big, which I think is so funny that that's your theme, but it really has allowed me to have that same courage in every other area of my life. I didn't realize how much unlearning I had to do until I decided that I was enough to live the lifestyle I wanted, and that I was enough to do what I love full time. And now that has started to show up in, like I said, every single area in my dating life, in my own personal healing journey, and again, in the way that I'm now able to show up and lead.
Mm-hmm. Whew.
Really
That's
long answer to your
fascinating.
question.
No. I mean, there's definitely more that I want to unpack in there because there's a lot there. And I think Jillian can relate. I can relate to these feelings of like, oh, I don't want to take up too much space. I think especially as women, and then to have an intersectional lens, like for me as a queer woman, for you as an African-American woman, like being in our skin, queer woman too. All right, right on, Benir. We just met. So you got a ton of intersectional lenses that you're holding in, like unlearning the narratives that you've perhaps been absorbing or have absorbed in your life. And so when it means what it means to actually say, I am worthy of taking up space. And not only that, when I have this story that someone's told me that money is like, money brings up the worst in people, or money can tear apart families, or money can see blah, 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 blah. Like the list goes on and on around people's money stories. I just like, there's so much to unpack underneath a lot of what you just said. And I'd like to hear more about what was required of you to unpack your money story, and what is kind of the process that you support people to. Let's start first with your money story and how you kind of healed from that, because so much of leading with a spark and leading big is committing to the healing journey so that we can actually be our best selves.
So part of it started really when I learned about manifestation. So I got really deep into manifestation, I would say around 2010. And prior to that, I'd always worked in financial planning. But again, somehow I convinced myself that that was for others. And I was always outside of the other, right? So, I've always been out of the box. But in the past, I saw that as a bad thing. Like the box was for those who deserved. And so I honestly thought that, it was for people who came from wealth, or power and money belong to people who looked a certain way, people whose family dynamic looked a certain way. And so I started to rewrite that story again when I learned about manifestation. And, even with that was a huge learning curve. I had to start with manifesting feathers because I didn't even believe that I could manifest money. I love it, Jillian. Queer power. In the beginning, I didn't really believe that I could manifest money. And so I started with manifesting feathers. And that helped me realize, wow, wait, did I really make that feather appear? And so I continued to learn how to tap into that power. And eventually that helped me realize, okay, well, if I can manifest that, I can manifest anything. And I started to manifest money. And the thing with money, I always tell people, manifestation is really simple. It is setting the intention, believing it, and then taking the action. And I was so great at setting the intention. I was wonderful at taking the action because, if you have never been wealthy, then you have to work hard to get money. So we have no problem putting in the work. But it was really healing that belief that not only did I deserve it, but that I didn't have to work hard for it, that I wasn't an other, and that I deserved it. I want to say in the same way, but maybe even more so. I deserved what I was asking for, because for the level of pain that I had to go through, and I'm sure many of you have had to go through, it's easy for us to connect with deserving the pain, but it's not always easy for us to connect with deserving the promise. And so I had to recognize that if I was deserving of the pain, which I certainly was not, but if I could believe that I deserved the pain, I had to also believe that I could deserve, the Bible tells us that for everything there's a season. So there's a time for weeping and a time for joy. So if I could deserve the weeping, then who am I not to deserve the joy? And so for me, changing my money story had less to do with changing the number of commas in my bank account and more to do with changing my feelings of self-worth. And that certainly started, with me hiring a coach. Funny enough, me changing my money story started with me changing my health story. And I always say, that your relationship with money reflects your relationship with self. And so once I started to heal the relationship with myself and realize that I was deserving of love and deserving of joy and freedom and peace, then I was able to see that I was deserving of money. So to answer your question, any client that comes to me, and it's funny because a lot of people in the healing community have felt that I've kind of stepped away from the healing work since I focus on dollars and commas. But there's no way to focus on the dollars if you don't focus on the healing. And so the very first step is really getting into the dirt of why you don't feel like you deserve it in the first place and rewriting that story. And once you rewrite that, the sky's the limit. I mean, $10,000 a month seemed impossible in the beginning. And now it's just, that's not even something to blink your eyes at, but it has to be what you believe. If you don't believe you deserve it, then you'll never see it.
And here's why this is so important, for so many reasons. I was excited about this conversation. And the first thing I'll say is women leadership is on the rise. Female leadership is the topic of 2018, right? But yet it's still under 10% of the population hold leadership executive seats in any of the major corporations. And when we talk about queer women leaders, we're talking about less than 2%. This is a problem, first of all. Second of all, because if we don't have a seat at a table, then we can't actually influence the conversation. And so money to me is a vessel for impacting change. Money when we unlearn our money stories and when we recognize that money is energy, it's an energetic exchange, and we put our money where our mission is, then we amplify our mission. And it's not about like having the fancy car and getting the fancy mansion. It's about like when you have access to resource, then you get to you invest your resource into things that matter. You invest in queer people of color, like women run businesses. You invest in folks that you love and believe in, right? But if you're in this place of kind of deficit, or you feel as though you don't deserve that, which I get, like, trust me, I'm the queen of this. Like when you were talking about like, don't want to inconvenience people, you've got burdens, you're unconventional, all these things that you don't want, in particular for those of us who have been educators, those of us who have worked in the public sector, it is very, very much a source of guilt, shame, and shoulds for me when it comes to money, because there are all these messages that other people put on me, And I think about, I wonder if anybody else in here can relate with that. Like there's some guilt that comes up with having more than like folks that we serve. There's some shame that you feel for X, Y, or Z, or there are all these shoulds like that we absorb again, that people have either told us or that we just feel perhaps compelled to believe, right? So I'm curious to hear your reactions to let's start with the guilt that comes up for people, especially women leaders, when they're facing, when they have an opportunity to like stand in their power and say, nope, this is who I am and I'm not going to apologize for it. This is what I have and I deserve this. What do you say to people when guilt bubbles up?
So I actually want to first address a couple things that you said. One being that so many people have guilt around having money in the first place, and they feel like money changes you. Money does not change you. Money reveals you. And so, one thing that I find with a lot of the leaders I work with, again, I work with purpose-driven people. So people who would do the work that they're doing, even if they weren't paid for it. And because of that, it's hard for them to understand that they deserve to be paid for it. And part of that guilt is believing that to want money means that they're materialistic. And you just said something so profound. Money is just energy. Money, I mean, honestly, I probably live the same way as I did before I had money. I was laughing with a friend of mine saying, that I was looking for a hotel, and I'm like, okay, where's the thrift shop? Where's Airbnb? And so money is not about having things. It's about having choices. It's about having power. And as purpose-driven leaders, if we want to have the impact that we've been called to have, then money simply opens doors for us to have that impact. I have a lot of people who feel like, well, they don't need more money because they're fine just getting by and doing the work that they love. And I always bring up Oprah because, she is just such an amazing example of going from pain to power. Yeah. But she doesn't really flaunt her things. When I think about Oprah, I think about philanthropy. I think about all of the people she's able to help. The Bible tells us that if we see our brother hungry, we should not simply tell him, be fed. And a lot of folks are really stuck in this space of, be fed, my brother, be fed, my sister. Well, if you had money, you could feed them. And so what I tell people who are struggling with the guilt is it really is about intention, and it's about how you use that influence. So again, money will not change you. If you have a heart for people, if you are doing what you do because you love it and because you're purpose-led, then money will simply allow you more power to do what you do. Now, if you secretly are greedy and you secretly are harboring, some feelings, and even greed, honestly, I feel is a judgment, because some people consider us greedy when we want things for ourselves and when we're not a martyr, especially as women. So it's not greedy to want the lifestyle that allows you to be at peace and happy and joyful, and so if that lifestyle for you means driving a nice car and wearing nice shoes because that makes you feel sexy and like you own the world, then own it. You don't have to apologize to anyone. That's right. Know that money doesn't change your heart. It just allows you to become more of who you are.
Right. It amplifies. It's an amplifier. It's a magnifier. Absolutely. To me. Somebody told me that 2 years ago when I was just starting on the entrepreneurial journey, and I thought, and it's funny, right? Like, you can live your whole life in this tunnel and not see this other conversation, but then when you're in a new space, all of a sudden you have new glasses on and you're like, whoa, everything is a choice. Everything is a choice. But you can get into this tunnel vision if you're a part of a system. For me as a teacher and a school leader, I was just kind of locked in and buckled up to this like deeply intense system that was very oppressive for me. And I didn't experience feelings of ease, power, choice. I felt depleted. And in fact, my health broke down, and that was my biggest sign. And so I resonate with the self-love, self-discipline is the first step. It's not about, we can't be, because integrity is everything to me. Like, we have to be honest with ourselves. We cannot be saying something and then walking a different talk. And so I'd love to hear how that shows up for you. Like, when have you had a moment where you had to choose to be in alignment versus, I'm sure, right, the more money, the more power, the more choices you have, the more that eliminates the complexities of life, right? The opportunities that people, you see the best and the worst sides of people when you have a little bit more resource. And so I'm curious to hear a moment when you chose integrity and it was a challenging kind of, perhaps it impacted you in a particular way, or it illuminated something about your leadership. Can you think of a moment or a story?
Honestly, I would say that also is a daily choice, particularly as it relates to who I work with. Because I talk about money, I sometimes attract people who only want the money. I have, a membership group, and then of course I also do private coaching. And sometimes I have people who simply want to make more money in their business, which is one reason that it's really important for me that I work with purpose-driven leaders. Because honestly, not that there's anything wrong with Bitcoin, but if you just want to learn how to make more money doing Bitcoin, or, and it's something that you don't love, your heart isn't in it, it's just money, I don't really care about your business.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's been about really being able to get behind the mission of the people that I choose to take on as clients, and not just seeing a dollar sign.
Right.
There are many people who can afford me as a coach, but I would hate speaking to them every week. I, would just not enjoy the process. And
Right.
so for me, being able to choose impact and real healing and transformation over a dollar sign is probably one of the decisions that I have to make daily in business.
Yeah.
I talk all the time about the fact that profit has to be priority, which is incredibly true. A lot of people do what they do because they love it, because they want to help, but you can help for free, go volunteer. So profit, yes, does have to be priority. But for me, it's not the priority. And so really making the decision to say no to things that don't feel good for my spirit. And really, when you were reading my bio, you kind of talked about the fact that, whoa, what a mission. I realized that I won't get to my mission on my own. Me doing this interview and supporting you is helping me reach my million. Me supporting the coaches, creatives, consultants that I work with, that's helping me reach my mission. And so if I can't get behind your mission, I would rather say no to your money.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I just love that you said it's a daily choice, because I literally had a conversation with my coach this morning about an opportunity that came on the horizon that was out of alignment with my values, and it had a big dollar sign. And I was like, sometimes we talk ourselves into, I'm going to be really transparent and vulnerable. Like, the truth is, what was fascinating for me as I unpacked what happened was I had this dialogue, this internal dialogue that was like convincing myself that maybe I could just squeeze in this, I could make it work. That was my immediate, could I do this? Because will this help my mission? But then I was like, time out. What is happening? This is not my audience. It's not in alignment with my values. And I need to just respectfully set some boundaries. And thank goodness my mantra is BIG, boundaries, integrity, generosity. Because I'll be more than generous and giving and give away as much of myself as I can to the folks who are in alignment with my community, the folks who are all committed to the work. And that is still, even within that realm, the boundaries are essential, because we as women, I think, can tend to want to please others, or want to over support, or forget to put our oxygen mask on first around let me just do a temperature check with myself before saying yes, because you clearly need me. Do I actually need, are we in alignment here? And it's okay for me to say yes to the person and no to the concept. And that's what's giving me power.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that, because I find that a lot of women really struggle with saying no. And for me, if it's not a complete and full yes, then it's a no. And there doesn't have to be a bunch of power behind that or negativity. It's as simple as, if someone asks if I want liver and onions, now that you might get a little negativity, but it's just a no. It doesn't mean I think you can't cook. That's just not my thing,
Yeah, exactly.
And I think when we can take all of the emotion that goes behind that no and simply make it as, do you want liver and onions?
Right, exactly. And it's no, actually, I'm a vegetarian. Thank you very much. Goodbye. It's that simple. It should be that simple. Right on. Yeah, that's good. And so, okay, we started with the guilt, and then we've alluded to the shame and the shoulds, but I'm curious to hear what is your advice to people who get to this place of so for me, I'll just say this, I serve communities. I worked in East Oakland. A lot of folks that I support on the grounds are in systems of oppression, and who live and operate in very many parents and communities who are living with food stamps and who are on welfare, and that's part of their experience. And so my journey in education is to like open up our eyes to see that we all deserve access to opportunities. So I offer from an educational equity lens, and still like I don't ever want to be perceived as this person who's like high and mighty coming in with, all this fancy stuff. And so I've like internalized messages about, what will they think? Or should I do this? Or should I, maybe I shouldn't, right? Like I'm just being really transparent and honest that I'm taking this opportunity to like, to be real about my own struggles around the shoulds and the shames. What do you do in those moments when you're legit, like I really care about these communities, and it's important for me to have kind of embrace the paradox of the truths and not deny who I am and where I'm at, but also serve to the utmost power that I can to open up opportunities and doors for others. Thoughts and reactions about that?
So pardon me in advance, but again, I already told you that I'm like kind of unconventional. So when I work with a client who is struggling with that, I believe that should is a 4-letter word. And so the first thing I tell them is get your should together. Because, a lot of times we are the ones putting that judgment on ourselves. Should is all about not accepting what is and feeling like we need to make reality something other than it is. That same person, again, everything is about intention. And a lot of times, specifically with the example you gave, we're trying to manage other people's emotions. And it's about the intention behind it. Now, if you are wearing your Givenchy and Louis Vuitton simply because you want to, kind of raise yourself to a higher level and show them that you're so wonderful, then that probably is not the best thing, especially because there's no integrity in that and it's not aligned with your mission. But if you do it because it makes you feel good, and who's to say that you walking into a school with your Jimmy Choo and your Givenchy won't allow someone who didn't believe that they could be a queer girl who came from nothing and grow up to now have things that make her smile. And so I think that when you operate in integrity, you really can release the energy of how other people will react because you know what your intention is. You know why you do it. Again, if you do it because, it's part of what makes you feel worthy, that's something you probably should look at. But if you do it simply because it makes you smile and it makes you happy, how other people feel you should be acting, that really doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, no, I think I know this is a topic that's been juicy in some other Spark communities, so I'm curious to hear what people think on the replay, because it's come up a lot with my clients, and I've unlearned a lot of my own messages, because here's the thing, like the truth of the matter, it'll always be a daily work. I'm always going to be a work in progress in this department. I still have a lot of work to do, and at the end of the day, like it's actually nobody's business, like what you're doing with your jackets and your shoes. And like, actually, this is your life. You get to choose. And like you were saying earlier, the way your lifestyle has not shifted drastically. You still have a lot of probably the same friends, some of the same items because they matter to you. And it's not like, I think there's this association with like more dollar signs means more things, and it actually doesn't. It just, again, it allows us to amplify our mission and our message. And I think the choice is ours at the end of the day, whether or not we believe those shoulds. And I love the get your shoulds together. I'm gonna write that down. Get your shoulds together.
And to piggyback off what you said about having the same things, I still drive the same Toyota Corolla, which has amazing gas mileage, because that's what's important to me, So it really isn't about, it all is a matter of where your priorities lie.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. And whether you choose to absorb other people's energy, this morning I told a client, like, put on the Matrix jacket. This is like an ongoing joke, because when I was going through a really hard time, 5 years ago, I went through a divorce and it was really traumatic for me. And so my therapist actually told me, like, whoa, Rachel, you're letting all this pain and hatred and like anger be absorbed in your being. Like it's taking over you, because I'm an empath on top of that. So if I'm around negative energy, I just take it all in. And she said, all right, so we're going to imagine you putting on a Matrix jacket every morning, like zip it all the way up. And when the hatred or when the negative energy comes at you, you need to just like move with it with your jacket on, so that you're not absorbing. It's not your responsibility. Like, that's their stuff. And you have the power to choose who and what and when you choose to let energy impact you. And I'll still live by that. And I like always talk about the Matrix jacket, because it's a daily choice for me. That's the truth.
Absolutely. And I also am an empath, so I can completely understand that. And so much of what we take on isn't even ours. And so, like you said, when we just zip up that Matrix jacket, which I actually get the reference because I finally saw Matrix for the first time last week.
Oh, that's so funny. I haven't seen it in like at least 10 years or whatever, but it's
right.
still, it's an image, right?
Absolutely. And I really think that needs to be, if there is any should, that is certainly something that we should do daily and throughout the day as needed, because it's not just judgment about money. It literally is everything. If you don't fit into this perfect little box of being polite and neat, and again, not causing burdens or not inconveniencing others, but how many of our lives are really that nice and neat?
Yeah. And who wants to live that life, right? Like, at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. It froze for a second.
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Every once in a while, Be Live like does this. I just said, like, maybe on paper it sounds nice to not have discomfort, but at the end of the day, like, who really, really wakes up in the morning saying, like, I hope that my life fits into a neat, tidy box, and I hope that I like don't do anything visionary, inspiring. I hope I don't disrupt the status quo. I hope that I just am polite. Like, I think a lot of us women, especially warrior women who are on missions, have a calling in their spirits. And part of that calling means, as we are zipping up our Matrix jacket, we also need to get ready to get out the shield and the sword and be like, right, so I'm actually here. I hope I disrupt. I hope today, like, who can I disrupt today? If I don't have any haters, then maybe I'm not living large enough. Maybe I'm not out there enough, because if you're really in the game of like changing the conversation, you will not please everybody. And it goes counter to a lot of what the stories that we lived in as children. It's counter to that narrative in so many ways. So it requires both strength. It requires support. Like, no one can do that alone, because at some point you just get exhausted. You need people by your side with their shields and their swords. And I think there's something to be said about that, like really embracing the power of what feminine leadership really is.
And you said something so powerful, that women, we're supposed to be seen and not heard. We're supposed to, just take care of things in the background and not make a lot of noise. But in honor of International Women's Day,
that's right,
well-behaved women rarely make history. And so if we follow that, then we're never going to fulfill our calling. Right. I'm not here for it.
That's right. And I'm so glad to be by your side on this journey. Like, there are hundreds of women in here who I'm honored, like genuinely honored and inspired by, because of the disruptor mentality. Like, we're not here to be polite. We're here to make a difference. And that's the difference. And so what a powerful, powerful thing, and conversation and like movement that you've created, because it's something to be really proud of. That's amazing, Benir.
Well, I thank you. And it really is an honor to be connected with you and your movement. I think we need each other. And I'm so grateful for what you're doing as well.
Right on, right on. Likewise. Well, right on was as we come to a close and we man, time flies, and we kind of wrap up and turn a corner to the closing question, which is there anything that I didn't ask you that you feel called to share?
For some reason, I don't really know where this is coming from. The only words that are coming up are start today. I think, for me, that certainly was a major part of courageous leadership, was deciding to just start. We try to make things so perfect again because we don't want to inconvenience. And we wait until we have the perfect website or the perfect, elevator pitch or whatever it is to really be able to step into our calling and live our dream. And I encourage you to just start today, whether that is you reading a book to enhance your knowledge so that you can be more prepared when it's time to launch, or you just going out and talking to someone, networking and telling them about what you do. Don't be afraid to show up imperfectly, because a lot of times perfection really is procrastination dressed up in Sunday's finest. And so, don't be afraid to just show up. Someone needs to hear your voice, and you deserve to take up all of the space you need to create the impact you were made to have.
That's right. That's right. Oh, I love that. I love that. And it's funny, it's so aligned with an Instagram post that I put on in the Spark leadership group. It says, you have a PhD in you. Like, stop waiting for permission, right? Where is it? Yeah. It's so simple. Like, don't wait. You're the expert in your experience. Start today. I love that. Beautiful,
Absolutely.
beautiful. Well, what a powerful pleasure and honor it is to know you, Benir, and I'm excited to stay connected and to continue supporting you. After this conversation, if you want to hop into the group and type in your website and stuff like that for folks who want to stay connected, that'd be awesome. Anything else you can think of before we wrap up?
No, I just thank you for this opportunity to get to know you. I already knew you were awesome, but now I'm like your bestie in my head. So I love it. And I'm so grateful for this chance to meet the Spark community.
Likewise. Right on. All right. Well, take good care and thank you again, y'all. Everybody else, stay in touch and make sure to comment in the group and let us know your questions.